Recording in progress. It's saying I need to unmute you, Sophie. Ask to unmute Sophie. Ask to unmute.
There we go.
There we go. Happy
Hi,
day.
team.
How you doing?
Yeah, good. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. 33 people. Good to see.
It's already more than the book launch. For those who don't know, we did an impromptu book launch in Sheffield, and we had a wonderful 2 people turn up. 2 lovely people who bought some books, but just 2.
Well, I reckon they must have been stoked having the man all to themselves.
Well, one geezer did email after and say he didn't really want the book. He just came to talk to me and then bought the book because of it.
Well, I mean,
as you said, Sophie, it's like having a little version of me in your bookshelf without answering back.
I'm still trying to work the buttons out here. Everyone, I can see everyone's video, which I don't think is necessarily a problem because I've got everyone on mute. So I think that's all right. Do we think that's all right? I can just see Nikki Kidd. Hi, Nikki. I can just see Nikki Kidd's smiling face. It's sort of cheering me up. So perhaps we'll leave the video on.
I've got Nikki and Luke. Hi, guys.
It's nice to have a couple of faces to respond to. I did a talk to a bunch of doctors and I had to laugh at my own jokes. And I think they found them funny. But it's just nice to have at least one face to kind of respond. Because James and Sophie have heard my jokes before. So
many times. Right. Good evening, everyone. We'll get cracking. It's just gone 7:30. Welcome to this call that we've called 1001 Tips on How to Tackle One Slam. Robbie's title, he takes all the credit. I don't know if you guys know, but he has got a book out. And it's a fantastic read. I've read it in various settings and we'll go into that as we go through the call. But we wanted to focus on giving you guys a bit of information with regards to the upcoming One Slam virtual. It's a bit unusual having an event that lasts 100 days. It's a whole month longer than the longest one from last year. But we wanted to make it slightly more general, right, guys? Focus on some more general coaching tips as we go along. I've got the wonderful Sophie Grant as well as Robbie to help us through this tonight. The way it's going to go is I'm just going to sort of chair the conversation and let the experts handle the tips and advice and interject on your behalf when I see a question emerge. But if you've got questions as we go along, if you click on the chat button at the bottom, you can ask us stuff in there. What we'll try and do, or what I'll try and do at the end, is consolidate them down into kind of meaningfully clumped questions. If there's loads, if there's not, we'll try and get them all individually. We are recording the session, so take notes if you want. Otherwise, you'll be able to watch it back on YouTube afterwards. Has my connection gone? That's not good. God,
well, at least saw his phone on the camera, put it to his ear. Love that. Yeah, it's cool, Dad. I can see your ear.
I think I might be back. I'm not sure. I think I might be.
There you are, yeah.
Right, okay.
Never went.
Bizarre. Sorry about that, guys. We have 2 internet connections down at the farm and it decided to jump to the other one. I've no idea how far I got with my ramble. I was just saying, if you've got questions, stick them in the chat and then we'll go through those at the end. So to get started, the first topic we had on the agenda was how to choose a distance. So One Slam, we're saying to you guys, there are kind of targets to aim for. But other than last time where we said aim for them up front, you can aim for them as you go along. So that changes things a little bit. Rob, do you want to lead the way on this one?
I thought you were just going to go like roll straight into it until we got to topic 2, James. Yeah, this was so as James has said, it's changed from last year. As last year, if you were doing the one slam, you had to pick a target beforehand, and actually then that was you were tied to that. Whereas now, yeah, you can pick it as you go along. Interestingly, one of the benefits I saw for a couple of my athletes last year was setting that target beforehand. So how to choose a distance, we've included it in there because we do still think it's important that you pick a target to go for. What goal you pick, that's going to be very individual. And there will obviously be the temptation to pick the largest distance. We all like, yeah, if it's all we're ultra runners, we just want to go longer and longer as possible. But when I remember back, like chatting to James about this idea initially, the thing we want to try and get across to people was the value of consistent training. And it's a way to see that in practice with a little bit extra kind of motivation to do it. So what I would suggest to anyone looking at distances is to have a think about what's possible. See what you can fit into your week. See what you've done in the past. And don't be afraid to put a bit of a stretch goal on it. So one of my athletes, one of my Centurion athletes, she actually, I think she went for the 70 miles a week last year. And I was a little bit like, wait, and I was impressed that she wanted to go for it. And you know what? She had the absolute best start to a year she's ever had. And she was finding extra bits of time to get this challenge done. And that actually ended up, and it will come into the next couple of topics on how we manage that. But don't be afraid to go a little bit like beyond, kind of look what you've done in the past. Try not to go wildly too much, because if we ramp up our training too much, it can lead to injury. But and it's one of the best ways to get injured is to double your mileage every week until you can't run anymore. But what might be wise to do is to kind of look what you've done in the past, and then I could chuck out numbers like 10, 15% a week, but look what you've been doing recently as well. So go back to last spring, say, what did I manage? Then look what you've done in the last couple of months and say, what can I jump up to? Because you don't want to make a big jump like that. And then don't be afraid to put something a bit different, so a little bit more than you think, because as you're already on this call, so you're going to have a few tips and tricks on how to actually get the most out of yourself. So whatever you were thinking already, we're going to help you do a bit more anyway. I think like this call is probably worth a 5% boost in distance, just for picking numbers out of thin air. And as James says, if you're not quite making it, you can change down a bit. But I think in setting the goal in itself, the process of thinking about it and trying to like just tell people about it. It hasn't got to be, I mean, social media is good and bad in that way. You can post it, but it might be a friend that you also have doing the challenge. It could be you're in a group, a coaching group, or your coach, or just sticking it on a piece of paper on the fridge. Like one slam, I want to do this distance, right? It holds us accountable. It's the kind of thing like on the fridge, when we're looking, okay, should I go out this evening for that extra 30-minute run? If it's on the fridge, it just holds it like a bit of paper. I have a picture of Emil Zatopek. He just holds me accountable on the back of my wall here. But it's just little things like that it's not, like if you are choosing that distance, don't be afraid to stretch it a little bit. Don't get yourself injured, but you'll be surprised, and this is what we'll come into the next bit, is that when we break things down a bit, it's actually not that hard. Obviously it's hard, but you'll surprise yourself with what you're capable of, I think. And that's definitely what happened with a couple of my athletes in the spring last year, was that they really did surprise themselves and me with just how well they and it got easier as they went along. Sophie, was that cover how to choose a distance?
Yeah, I was thinking as well, you've got 100 days, right? Like you've got a bit of time to build through that too. So it might be that you start a little easier and use that 100 days to build up bigger weeks, rather than necessarily going in that first week and straight in hard and fast.
Yeah. And we definitely see that with some people, they look at it and they go, right, 100 days, I'll divide that total by 100, and then I'll do that every single day. And that's one way of doing things. We will talk about other ways of doing it, but it's not necessarily the best way to do it. And even like a normal training block, you'll peak up. And the way the slam works is, and we'll get to the other, like the single races and the single events within them, they can be big things to build up to, and they will take a chunk off your total. Definitely Viola last year, I think she had the 50k towards the end, and we knew that was in there So it meant that we could play around with the weeks beforehand and have even a little bit of a taper because we knew we were going to take 30 off in one day. So how to choose a distance? I suppose that's like what we can, James, you feel that covers choosing distances? Is anyone?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think the important thing is we're trying to set you guys up to have a really great running year. And this really worked for us as athletes as well as coaches in 2021. We got a huge amount out of it. I did. It was the most consistent period of training I'd had in years because I felt a level of accountability to it that I just, hadn't had for a long time. So we've got a real opportunity as runners to kind of come together and support each other through it and follow each other's progress and really have the most incredible running year because we had this great consistent start to it. So coming on to sort of the next question, how would a runner prepare to tackle this sustainably? They've set their target. They've chosen initially what they're going to set out towards, albeit they could adjust further down the line. How do they make that sustainable?
And that, Sophie, you're going to jump on that. I'm just going to say it links in. When we're choosing the distance, we're not trying to break ourselves. That's what we're doing. That's why the next one is how to plan your week sustainably, not how to destroy yourself in achieving this challenge. Slight difference.
Just going to jump in on that as well. Not even just the breaking, like choosing one of these things or a couple of these things could be an opportunity to do something that you've never done before. It could be doing, 100 miles in a week or like the Vert challenge or one of those things. It could just be, okay, I'm not necessarily going to do all of them 100, but I'm just going to pick something that I haven't done before and use that as my goal to train towards. Sustainability. So how do you break it all down? So I would suggest looking at your week, your month, even your 100 days and figuring out what are your standing weekly commitments? What are the things that you know that you have to be at every week? Maybe it's work, maybe it's picking up the kids from school, maybe, like all of that stuff. And then figure out where you can fit the running in around it. Does it mean that you can get up a bit earlier and do something there? Do you have time at lunchtime? So start by breaking it down of like, right, well, where can I actually fit that in? I highly recommend writing some of this stuff down, making yourself a plan, right? Be prepared for that to all go out the window. But by putting it down on paper, when it is cold and dark in January and February, and you're like, I really don't want to get up for that run, or I don't know what I'm going to do today. If you have a plan written down, you're like, I don't have to think about the fact that I know I need to get up and do my 4 miles before work. It's there, it's ready to go. It also, I would say, be willing to adapt it, because it's all well and good having this written down, but if a child's been up all night and you've had no sleep, or you were out partying and you've had no sleep, then actually maybe getting up in the morning and doing that 4 miles is more detrimental than it is going to be helpful. And there's so many sort of factors that can factor into that sort of thing as well. Like it's really important through this to listen to your body, because it can be very tempting to go, okay, well, I know that I want to hit this big goal, so I have to get up and I have to do X amount of miles this week, or I have to do this, when actually maybe you need to just take the gas off a little bit and have an easier week. And, maybe then you can see if you can put it into some of the running down the line. But being adaptable with your plan is super important. Because we, as these guys said, we want you to enjoy it, and we really don't want, people to come out with injuries from this. And that's about looking after yourself. So as to how you actually put the running in each week, double days are a fab way of just getting a bit more mileage in. So it could it could be 20 minutes, it could be 30 minutes, whatever, just a little easy run at the end of the day, or at the start of the day when you maybe wouldn't normally do it, will just start to rack up that mileage. You'd be amazed at how just putting in, 2 or 3 easy runs. That's, if you do 3 easy 30 minutes during the week, that's 90 minutes extra. And there's a lot less cost from doing it that way. If you are going out and you're doing your 90-minute run, then there is cost to that. But adding in a little sneaky 30 minutes here and there you know, you don't need so much recovery from it. It is not such like an endeavor. You don't have to kind of go and fuel it in the same way. It's a really good way of just bumping up the mileage. If you can, try not to leave it all to the weekend. So while that is definitely a way of doing it, it is not going to build great consistency, and really good consistency is what builds really good training and really good fitness. And you know, it's an easier way to manage your running during the week, rather than going, I'm just going to do all my long runs, just put it all on the weekend and run, you know, 250 milers on the weekend. What else? Right, so I wrote lots of notes down. Get organized as well. Like, lay your kit out. Do whatever you can do to make it easy on yourself. Lay your kit out. Like, make sure that you've got food for before, for after, for during, you know, like just make it easy. Don't think, oh, I'll get up in the morning, where's all my stuff? Oh no, I was meant to have some food before I went. And like, just be organized, because if it's there, it's not a problem. Try and get your friends involved, get other runners involved, get your club. Like, if you are accountable to someone else, super helpful. I think it's one of the reasons that I really in the beginning was so consistent with my running, was because I used to run with my husband's father, and he used to run down to meet me, and the thought that if I didn't get up and go for a run with him, that I was going to be leaving him outside in the rain at 6:30 in the morning. I got up. You know, you always get up if you think that you're going to be disappointing someone else. So get other people involved. It also just makes it more fun too, and particularly in the winter, in the dark, it can be nice to be in a pack. What else have we got? Plan around your nights out, right? Like, probably, I mean, who knows if we're going to be allowed out in January and February, but hopefully there will still be some semblance of normalcy, and you'll be able to, you know, like, if you're going to be doing that sort of stuff, plan it into your plan, put it in there and go, okay, right, well, I know I'm going out on Saturday night, so I'm going to do my long run on Saturday morning, and then I'm going to hydrate really well before I go out, so that I know, and Sunday I'll just make it a bit easier. Like, just whatever you've got going on, put it into the plan so it's not a surprise, and just plan around it. What else have we got? I think that's what I've got so far for that. Anyone? Robbie?
We did have a question come up. Should you run every day, or do you need to build in rest days?
Oh, I mean, I'm a fan of building in a rest day.
Yeah, but not doing them though, right?
Not so much. Eventually I do them.
I think it's interesting as well. Like, we talk about running every day, and correct me if I'm wrong, James, but you can do walking towards the challenges as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Time on foot. As long as you make an effort to go out to cover ground on foot, that is kind of what we're saying is, you know, don't include step count around the house in the day. If you go out for a walk the dog, whatever, that's fine to count.
And it can definitely help. Like, if you're adding the doubles in and you've not done double days before, and actually the idea of it's a bit like, oh, it's a bit much. Even just adding an evening walk where you're doing 2 miles on a walk. If you are out walking the dogs, like, for us as coaches, it's often something that people overlook in terms of like weekly load. Right, but it can actually be really, like, quite a lot, depending on where you live. If you live somewhere hilly or particularly muddy, or you've got particularly energetic dogs and it's an upper body workout, getting dragged back round by them, that's something that could be worth taking into account. So even if you could have rest days where you do a walk, or if you need rest days and that's what you usually do, then you know that anything you're doing is aimed towards consistency week to week, month to month. So that day off might not bring you closer to your total that day, but it will allow you on the days following and the weeks following and the months following to chip away. So it's kind of always looking at that bigger picture. So yeah, I'm similar. I do know the value of rest days. I am harder to tie down to one. And
this is advice that I need to take myself sometimes. So just put my hand up to that one, but try and take them before you need them. Because I know that sometimes I get to the point where I'm like, oh no, I need a rest day. When actually, probably if I'd just taken the one that was in my plan, then I wouldn't have ended up in that place.
If you are a run streaker, where you like to get runs every day in. That's cool. That's up to you. I'd like live and let live. But just be kind of wary of like how you can adapt those. So an easy run of 30 minutes can be very different to a run on a muddy trail that's quite tiring, or a run that's got lots of hills in, very different to an easy one. So it's kind of like, I'm sure if you are a dedicated run streaker, you'll appreciate the differences and the ups and downs you need to put in there. But yeah, I'm a big fan of rest days, always advising them. Some athletes are more convinced by them by others, but it does work. And I just get on a bike. Does that count?
No. The scooter counts for the kids. Nikki Callis has asked if walks can be included. Yes, absolutely. I'm not a run streaker, but I found personally last time that having a streak going and doing a minimum of 3 miles or 30 minutes a day kept me on track, like in a way that, I don't know. I'm quite guilty of, I've taken a day off this week. Another one crops up. And then before I know it, I've run 4 out of 7 days. And my consistency was better because I kept myself running or walking or moving every day. I wouldn't normally prescribe that, but I tell you what, it worked for me that time. So I think it is horses for courses. Just make sure if you are trying to keep a streak going, and as Rob says, streakers will tell you this, take it easy on those easy days and keep it short. Luke, I think Sophie answered your double run day question almost bang on the time where you posted that. So that was great. Guys, what do you think about, slightly off our brief, but what do you think about people who sort of try and bank mileage and get ahead of the game early on and treat it that way? Like if they treat it as an event and they're like, I want to hit this target at all costs, so I'm going to try and get miles in the bank early on.
The same approach I have to pacing with ultras. I would try and finish strong rather than start fast. And again, if to use the analogy, it comes down to your fueling, your pacing on day-to-days and all these kind of things, and your pacing in terms of that volume. If you're gradually building up, I think the example I used earlier, Viola, I don't even know if she's on the call or not, but I think she clocked some her biggest weeks towards the end. And that was, she built the ability to do that by gradually building up. So I would say, yeah, it's one way of doing it, but kind of, you're almost banking on being exhausted from the mileage you're doing. It doesn't, I just can't get my head around it. Like I do get it's sometimes as well, it's quite nice to, if you have got an event early on in that, or you are doing something a bit longer, it does give you a bit of a kind of a head start. But if you want to do that, I would try and do it in the most sustainable way possible. So don't go out there and do like 4 or 5 back-to-back long runs just to kind of, really get me going. But actually, if you do a slightly longer run, it's more controlled, or you've got an event early in the calendar that you can then have an easy week afterwards, but with some good volume in there still, because I would look at it like that. If you are going to try and bank something at the beginning, do it as sustainably as possible. Don't do it in a way that makes everything else hard, because then as well, it's the psychological part of then spending the next 90 days being knackered, or you spend 90 days feeling better and better and better and better. I know which one I would rather choose. And it definitely, like in terms of sustainability, our psychology and our motivation can be impacted by how tired we are. So if we can build that in, I would definitely, yeah.
I guess I can see why people might be tempted, because I'm assuming that January, 1st of January it starts, right? So people might have time off in January. Like, right, like, let's get that, high mileage in while I've got the time. Maybe use that instead to do doubles instead of necessarily doing lots of big back-to-back days, and then look at, further down the line, okay, right, I know I've got that time off. When else, because there's a few other holidays in there too. When else do I have more time off that I could look at, maybe building up to a bigger adventure or some more mileage or that sort of stuff. Because the thing is, if you front load it like that, the potential for injury goes up, and then you may not be running for the next 90 days. Very
true. Sophie, I really liked your tip about get your stuff ready. As a parent of 2 young kids who's pretty strung out with work a lot of the time, if my stuff is there ready to go, as soon as they're in bed, it goes on and the head torch is charged and, you know, I'm out the door within 5 minutes rather than spending half an hour messing around getting ready. Following on from that, like, how should people aim to plan or structure nutrition around this kind of duration of challenge?
I was going to say as well, I once got that tip from Dan Lawson that he sleeps in his running clothes, so he can just get up
different reasons.
Jump out of bed.
Yeah.
But then I tried it in Jordan, and the stray dog that we'd adopted climbed on the bed and weed on me.
Yeah.
And it's my running clothes. So at the start of the day, I had to have a freezing cold shower and wash all my stray dog urine soaked clothes. So sometimes it backfires. Make sure you don't leave your fresh clothes by the door and or your shoes outside and let a fox get in them. That's always.
I was going to say, I'm not quite sure. I just asked. I'm sure it was about nutrition, but I've learned about fox urine in the process, which has been really
cool. You don't want your sandwiches anywhere near fox urine. In terms of nutrition as well, so like we'll obviously a very difficult subject to talk about en masse with individual stuff. So, but one thing to try and think of is fueling the work that you're doing. I always say this when I'm talking to groups of people. Look at the work you're doing, and especially if you start introducing double days or an extra walk in the evening, and make sure you've got the energy to do that work. Right, so if you are doing a double, it becomes more important to refuel after that first run. It might be some like a small amount of carbohydrates that are going to fuel the afternoon run. Usually, if we only run once a day, our meals over the course of the day are going to replenish our muscle glycogen stores. And we're going to have 24 hours roughly till the next run. So the body recovers and it's ready to go. If you're running twice in a day, there's a chance that you're going to then start the next run a little bit more depleted if you're not a bit more conscious about it. So actually, if you're running in the morning or you're running at lunch and in the evening or however you want to split it up, make sure if you are short on time, again, like the same as preparing your clothing, I'd prepare snacks. And it might just be that you put a couple of the snacks you enjoy in the shopping basket when you go, or if you shop online or however you like to shop. But like your little go-to snacks that aren't the ideal thing in that situation, but they're actually what you're going to grab if you're in a bit of a rush. There's plenty of options for things like that. But think about like one protein that helps recovery, but carbs. If you're upping your mileage and you're doing doubles or you're running in the evening and then running again the next morning, that's the kind of thing to think about really in terms of just how you've changed what you're fueling in your day. And the doubles definitely are a way, because every time we run, we're using up the muscle glycogen, and we recover over a day. And if we're not like being more conscious about it, you then start the second run depleted, and by the time you do the run the next day, you're even more depleted, and it just kind of like knocks us around a little bit. And if it's new for you, then that's definitely something that's worth considering. I
mean, even if it's not, if you're going to be upping your mileage, like it's important to put enough in. And that whole like low mood, eat food situation is not just applicable to your actual run during your actual run. Like you'll find I find if I don't refuel that well afterwards, then I can get a bit snappy in the afternoon.
What about the mornings?
Yeah, the mornings too. They're not always great. If I go and I run without breakfast.
I can tell it's after dinner. I thought I could chance that joke then. I wouldn't have tried it in the morning, I don't think, or post run. And like anything that goes to like 90 minutes or a bit longer, especially if you're building up the mileage, anything over 60 minutes, I think about fueling that run. And it's not that you're fueling. I know plenty of us here can go, I don't need to eat anything for 90 minutes. I'm perfectly fine. But you're not essentially fueling that run. You're fueling the next one. You're fueling the recovery from that run. Your body gets in and it kind of goes, right, I better build things back up again. Instead of having to wait for you to get in, have a shower, feed the kids, do a little bit of work, and then suddenly you realise that actually the body's a bit hungry. If you're eating throughout that run, you're less likely to get into that kind of deficit. And I think it can be. I think the idea that you're eating for you're fueling for the next run is a good way of thinking about it. If we're building up our mileage to a level that we've not sustained before, and like anything longer as well, in terms of like how you feel during that run is always going to help as well. So like if you're a bit tired, a bit kind of like you've done a bit more mileage and you've got a 2-hour run at the weekend or 2.5 hours, you feel like a bit longer. I don't like huge, massive runs all the time. I'm sure there'll be some people thinking like that's still a little run. If you are doing that, then it's good to think about fueling that the whole way through, so you can feel good the whole way through that run. And we're talking about distance here, and that's one of the things I was going to say before as well. Actually, like we talk about distance, and it's a distance challenge. But actually, like as coaches, we very rarely set things to distance. A lot of it's to time. So again, like in this challenge as well, just remember about sustainability of the week. Have a think about how you. So I know that some athletes will change their plans on where they run to try and get a bit more distance in than they usually would. So that's another thing about sustainability of your week. If you're changing it, okay, look, I need to get this many miles in this week. I'm going to get more if I run it around the tarmac loop or around the car park rather than the trails I usually use for my easy run. That's going to change the impact on your body as well. So just be aware of that kind of stuff. If you are shifting it to and again, like in terms of recovery, if you're doing more running on flatter, harder surfaces than you ever would, there might be a kind of muscular need for a bit more protein as well, just to make sure that your body is adapting to the extra stresses you're putting on it. I went off on one there. That wasn't really fueling.
Really good for practicing race fueling too, right? Like,
yeah,
you know, if you're fueling a 60-minute run, you're fueling a 90-minute run. Tell you what, you're going to be really good when you start getting into those slams this year.
Yeah.
The gut has been proven to be trainable. You can train the gut. So anyone who says that I can't eat during races or I really struggle in the second, you can train the gut to get better at it. Right, and that's the same situation as you're running. You stress it a bit. I like to try and, like, people I train with that aren't great at eating during races in ultras, I try and shove gels down their throats during like threshold runs when they least want them, because I think like, yeah, mate, just try that, bang, or in the middle of 2 intervals, right? Because then you're putting it in a high stress situation with the stomach, and actually if it can then learn to kind of work through that, could be a good one. But that's not really to do with.
Also, have some stuff that you really, really like. Like, I'm a bit addicted to the Talk ginger flapjacks. Like, one of those would get me out the door just for a run. Just be like, oh, yeah, I fancy one of them. Off I'll go. Take my ginger flapjack.
See, I go the opposite way. I eat things that I don't like whilst I'm training because I know it's good psychological training for the second.
Yeah, I mean, I can't race with it, but I can definitely. It's not racing food for me, unfortunately, but it's definitely training food.
I got these horrible crisp breads, and it's nice as well if you're in a group and you pull out a snack that's horrible, no one else wants some. You can offer it round, knowing full well that no one's going to take that off you. You look like you're real friendly, and everyone just kind of goes, "No, thank you." Nutrition's quite a difficult subject.
Yeah, have bad snacks.
Yeah, I think that is in there. I think it is.
Eat bad snacks. Put your friends off from stealing them and make it more attractive for you when you're racing that you have good snacks. I like that. Right, within the overall one slam journey, we've got these 5 kind of bolt-on pop-up events. And the way that will display is, we'll talk about the Strava syncing and stuff because Simon right at the top of the call asked about that, but I'll cover that at the end. But there'll be a way that you guys can kind of see who's done what and track your progress against those bolt-ons as you go along. They'll be part of the leaderboard, and leaderboard's the wrong word. They'll be part of the kind of in-running results. We've got a night run on the second evening. That can be of any length. It's just to get you guys out and doing something that you might not necessarily have done before, especially to our newer to trail runners. The rerun random on Blue Monday, which I promise will be amusing because Dan will make it up as he goes along. We'll try and, give you guys the actual schedule for that, but we're sure as heck not going to tell you what's going to happen before it comes out of Dan's mouth, because that makes it funnier for everybody. One Love is a 50K weekend that we had over Valentine's in lockdown earlier this year, and we're bringing back. So that's a longer one-off run as a Bolton event. Then we've got the One Community Week, which many of you would have taken part in before, where you can cover between 5K and 100 miles over 7 days. And then perhaps separately, we'll come on to the vertical challenge right at the end. But you guys, how should people factor in those longer one-off virtual events within the bigger picture of the slam?
I reckon it's like treat it like a training block. You've got 100 days. If you've got some of the bigger races in there, I would definitely encourage putting them in there as part of it. And you can like start planning out as if you would, right, I got 2.5 months to prepare for this race. And I've got these little races in between, like other ones in between. I don't know how you plan for the rerun random. Some of those were I guess he was allowed a bit of artistic license as a runner in some of those. That's always helpful. I don't know if I actively encouraged any of my athletes to actually sign up for those, but they still did. We got through them. But yeah, I would definitely encourage that, and it just gives a little bit of focus on kind of, instead of just, if at any one point it becomes I'm just clocking miles for the sake of miles. No, actually, you've got the overarching slam idea behind it, and you've also got a little goal at the end that hopefully your newfound fitness from this love of consistent and sustainable training then develops into a wonderful new virtual 50-kilometer PB or any of the other challenges, and like some of the shorter ones. Don't be afraid to try out some of the shorter distance. Well, I find that, like, if I'm talking to a bunch of ultra runners, they're usually more afraid of a 5K than a 50K. And that's fine, right? Because it's almost like it's James, you tried one this last year, didn't you? You had a crack?
Horrific. Absolutely horrific. It's not the worst distance. I think 10K half marathon is worse, but I would rather line up at 100 mile all day over a 5K. I mean, it's horrendous. Yeah.
But that's like, I love to. I think I wrote something for fast running called The Conversation, where like the techniques we use to get through a 5K, right? It's like a voice screaming at us to shout. They're the same techniques we use to get through that voice in an ultra, which is whispering in our ear. So like the 5K is screaming, and we develop really kind of intense ways of dealing with that, and we get through to the next lamppost, or we focus on someone's shoes ahead of us, or whatever techniques we use. They're still usable in a longer ultra. But just slightly different. Like, you don't have to just scream at yourself to get to the next lamppost, because there's about 500 more lampposts if it's a 100-miler, and that can get a bit laborious. But yeah, so like, I definitely would include some of the one, and that also might change how we go back to picking your distance, right? If you're training for the mountains, and actually the one that most excites you is the virtual the ascent kind of day, right? If you then spend the 2 months beforehand getting as many flat miles in as possible to hit a set distance, that's not going to be the most beneficial. But actually, you could pick a shorter distance in your one slam kind of goal that allows you to get a bit more vert in. You can measure the vert yourself and kind of set yourself maybe a secondary goal around that side of things. And it's just kind of making sure that it's the right challenge for you. And that's like, you've got the options here. It hasn't got to be. I honestly don't think like the biggest numbers are the best. That's not what it's all about. And if someone actually finds a way to improve their own training consistently, and one of those events at the end, whenever we're setting a training plan, one of the things we always say is we start at the goal and we work backwards. So actually on this call, maybe we should have started at the start and said, what challenge are you going to do in the one-off events before we say what distance are you going to do? Because then you can work back from that goal, be it a 5K, 10K half marathon, if you're feeling a bit masochistic, or the 50K or the random events, and actually work back from that. I don't know, like if you're planning the random, you can't really work back that. But I mean, you could just set yourself a random task, like let a random stranger set you a running goal each week, and that could get you ready, like psychologically. I'll just give out down a number.
I quite like that.
I think you should prepare for between 100 meters naked and 6 days running to a different country. That will be in the remit of what Dan will come up with there, I'm sure. And obviously it's my duty to bring Dan into the real world and actually present something that is achievable. So I don't know how the hell you prepare for Dan Lawson. Go back and listen to the British Ultra Running podcast. What about the vertical then? Because I think that's the most difficult in many ways. Certainly, possibly the most damaging if it's approached with kind of no warning. Would that be fair, guys? Like,
no warning.
I mean,
well,
honestly, probably the most damaging approached anyway, if you're going to do 24 hours of it.
Yeah, that's true. And it is one day. You can hit as much as you want, and we will share totals. As long as you guys are happy, we will share your totals. So what is sustainable? How do you get to that day, that event in shape to actually give that a go? What should you be looking for as the appropriate hill or route for that day? What's your tips and advice, guys?
I had a question for you, James. What time does it start on the 19th?
Yes.
Is it like midnight?
We'll go midnight to midnight, right? So it will be a 24 hours starting at 1 minute past midnight.
Oh, mate. What? So you just bring the sleep deprivation into it straight away.
Yeah,
don't
but
like
you know,
midnight.
that's good preparation for almost no events. So
West Island Way.
Loads of events. Lavorado, Trans Gran Canaria. There's loads of events where you start in the middle of the night.
yeah, West
Are you
Island
going to
Way.
start
Well, actually,
South Downs Way
yeah.
100
West Island Way.
South Downs?
Deborah's jumped straight in. Correct, West Island Way. Although I think that might be 1 a.m. Anyway, let's say midnight to midnight because I've had to make that up on the spot and now I've got to stick with what I said. So if you want to lobby against that, go ahead. But yeah, okay, Sophie, carry on with that after you've heard that news.
Okay, so the Vert challenge is going to, like, I was thinking about this before, you kind of need to decide whether you're going to go in for the like full 24 hours, or are you just going to go in and see how much Vert you can do in a slightly more reasonable way, and maybe it's a few outings, you know, within that 24 hours, rather than necessarily going all in uphill. James was saying earlier that you can do it inside if you wanted to, so you could do it on a treadmill.
Yes.
Which is a different proposition because you're not then having to deal with the downhill, and really the downhill is what is going to cause the problem. You know, the uphill is hard, but like all of that running downhill is where you really get yourself into trouble. So it is going to be about finding the right hill, and it is going to be about using all of that time beforehand to get yourself into a position where you can do that for 24 hours. As Robbie said, you know, like if you're going to do that 24-hour Vert challenge, then trying to hit those flat running mile goals is probably not going to be the best use of your time or quad muscles. So it's finding the right hill. I probably personally would prefer something a little steeper on the uphill and then a little easier on the down, so that you can afford to kind of work a bit harder. You don't want to be spending ages of time going up along, you don't want your distance to be long going up the hill, but you can afford for it to be a bit longer going down, just to make the gradient a bit easier so that you can run downhill easily. I would suggest if you were doing the 24-hour, even if you're not doing the 24-hour, hiking in this situation will be your best friend. Not only do you need to look after your quads and your legs going downhill, but if you thrash them on the uphill, it then makes the downhill much harder. So it's important to remember that as well.
Just bank mileage straight away. Just bank it for the climb hard as possible, and then just hang on for 23 hours and 39 minutes, whatever it was.
I mean, I think it's why people get into trouble so quickly at Wendover, to be honest, is because the climbs are really steep uphill, so you're kind of going for them. And then a lot of the descents are quite easily runnable and people just let loose. And then it's like, oh, that was lap 1, 4 more to go.
You can opt for that one.
So if you are hiking uphill, try and hike with purpose. Don't sort of dilly-dally, as it were. Hike with purpose, and then take it super easy on the downhill. I was thinking about ways that you could do this. If you were going to dose it in, instead of necessarily just using the one hill, you could use a hill in your area and try and find as many different routes up and down it. I mean, this is all good training as well. You could keep it interesting by doing that sort of stuff. You treat this like a race, like what you're going to eat beforehand. Fuel it like a race. Really practice what you're going to eat. Practice eating up and practice eating down, because you need to be able to continually fuel yourself for this sort of situation. Because you're going to be running through the night. I mean, it's a good opportunity even now, right? Like night is like 4 o'clock. So we're all getting very used to using our head torches again. But practice those hills at night, or in the dark, I should say, rather not necessarily in the middle of the night, but practice them in the dark. Practice using your head torch. If you have a mountain, I don't know if any of you guys have mountains, but if anyone has a mountain that they were going to use it on, and they are going to be going up for quite a long time and then down for quite a long time, it could be a good opportunity to also practice using your head torch on a lower beam on the uphill and a much brighter beam on the downhill. The brighter your light, the faster you can run and the more information that you can take in. So it's really important to have the best light that you can have for going downhill, because you need to be able to see as much as possible so that you can make good decisions without breaking too much.
Right, help your muscles. If you're slamming on the brakes, there's a rocks that appeared you haven't seen. Like we spoke about going easy downhill. It doesn't have to. It doesn't not to do with pace. Your pace may still be fast going easy downhill if you're a competent downhill runner. But what's the most important thing for all of them, even the likes of Kilian Jornet, you watch him. He goes downhill fast, but it's damn easy. He's not running downhill hard at any point. He's almost recovering, and that's really, I think, a really nice place. If you are, depends what you want to get out of the 24-hour challenge as well, right? Because if you want it, in my mind, I start looking at the optimum ascent for up and down, all this kind of stuff. If you just want to enjoy it as well, pick nicer routes, pick longer routes, like build stuff into it. But if you are intrigued in trying to do the best you can out of it as well, have a look at some of the 24-hour cycling stuff online. There's some really good information around that. And the downhill means nothing to them, right? So it's easy. But in terms of performance and finding the right climb and stuff, there might be some useful information you could pick up, because it's the 24-hour records for running are a little less sparsely. What's the word? Wow, they're not. Yeah, but
I mean, even have a look at them, right? Like, there's got to have a look at what gradients they're using.
Yeah.
And the length of the hill, because they're not using 1,000-meter climbs. They're using short climbs and just doing reps.
So is that what you want to one up last year? A few of us took on. I've just had this on the shelf behind me. That's the one up buckle that we gave away for doing 70,000 feet in a week. What we found was that 25 to 30% was steep enough to, give you a good bang for your buck up. And if it was smooth enough coming down, then you could also run pretty smoothly and not actually damage yourself too much. But that was after a massive amount of exploration as to what exactly was going to be the best climb and descent. The other good thing about, and this was in Wendover, if you want to come out and hang on narking around with us during that day, I'm sure a few of us will be there. But the good thing about that is you essentially crew yourself. We were hiking in with a pack, stashing it halfway up that climb and kind of crewing ourselves from there. So it basically planning and preparation was the winner there for sure. It was interesting.
Get people to come out for you as well, right? Like, sure, crew yourself, but get people to come. If you're going to do 24 hours, get people to come and even just say hello, because you're like, right, break it. You can break down into like a little checkpoint or a little goal. Like, I know that so-and-so is going to come and see me at 8 o'clock in the morning. So how much can I get done before they come here? So-and-so is going to come and give me some cake at 12. Right. How much can I get done before they get there? And it just, I guess it's just like working with a race, right? Like breaking it down into those little bite-sized goals of keeping moving.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think a good time to add in that there is a section on downhill and uphill running within this book. And there's also a section of 24-hour running. So if you do want to combine both, nearly all of the information you need is in this hefty tome. I'm not really, that's about as much as I can do promotion of the book without feeling a bit weird. So was that a good segue into that? Does that work? Should I do that again?
If I'm honest, no, but yes. No, I don't. If any of you use social media, you may have seen Robbie's got a book out, and also if you listen to any running podcast ever, you'll probably know Robbie's got a book out. But honestly, it is. I don't say this lightly. I do not read. I just barely read, but it is a good. It is a good read. There's loads of helpful stuff in there, and follows on from a lot of what we're talking about here. I just wanted to address a couple of the more practical questions. We've been going 50 minutes, so we can probably start edging towards. Sophie, you want to say something first?
I do.
Go ahead.
Polls, definitely helpful. Practice with them in the lead up. Use them. They're really good. But also toe and foot care for the 24-hour up and downhill. If you are not used to doing it, make sure that you have tended to all of that sort of stuff and have a blister kit with you and all of that sort of stuff, because you're going to be doing a lot more banging of your toes in your shoes going downhill. Okay, that's it. I'm good.
I think I would just say on the poles as well, and even when you're picking, if you're picking a line that's really the right height but not the most suitable, or it's not as often used, be aware of your impact on that trail, especially if you're using poles. You'll be surprised over 24 hours of going up and down. If you were to do like the whole day, you will very quickly create quite an impact on that environment. It's not saying you don't do it, but I was just kind of like, just a good one to be aware of.
Yeah, that is very true. We noticed the damage to the climb that we were hanging out on that week was pretty substantial. And you really need to have trained for that as well. Like the upper body, you know, I'm a very stacked guy, so it's easy for me to use poles for a long time. But for a lot of people, they just don't have this kind of like shape, and then it becomes very wearing very quick. And all of a sudden, you've damaged yourself in a way you didn't even think possible. Just something practical that Simon Best asked right at the top of the call about syncing with Strava. Chris Mills, the genius behind Race Director timing solutions, he has managed to already integrate our website with Strava. So when you go onto Strava, there'll be an app for One Slam that you can add to your Strava account, which will sync it into our website. So unlike last time where it did become a little tiring, manually entering every time you'd been out and run some miles, it will sync from Strava. So we'll give you the details on how to do that in the next couple of weeks. And from the 1st of January until the end of that challenge, then things will be updated automatically for you, which is pretty cool. So thanks to him for putting that together. And Simon also asked at the bottom of the call if he can climb the Burj Khalifa for the Vert Challenge. By all means, please send pictures. We would love to see that. I don't think that did last time.
With the Strava side of addition there, James, as well, it also allows if the activity you're doing is not something you're going to put on Strava, then it's probably not one that would count towards or it's going to end up on the Strava. I won't use a rude word, but the Strava W account on Twitter, like mowing the lawn or kind of walking around the conservatory. If that's a good kind of sense check, right? I don't know if I can put this on Strava. I've just I've walked around a sweet shop for 3 hours.
And also, just to put your mind at rest, if you don't like Strava, the other option will still be to input everything yourself, session by session. You can do either or both. It's up to you. I think Strava will work for a lot of people. Accounts are free. You can pay for a Strava account and get loads of features, but you don't need any of that for what we're talking about here. So
you do it off a private account.
Good question. Yeah, I presume so. I'll check that with Chris, but I don't see any reason why not. It's just the integration with the back end of our website, so that should be fine. Cool. Yeah, guys, that was brilliant. I think covered loads of ground, answered some of my questions. Are there any others from the group? Anything that anyone wants to ask before we move on? I'm just logging onto Facebook to see if anything's been asked in there, but I didn't see anything earlier. No, nothing in there. Okay, any final thoughts, Rob, Sophie? Anything else you want to leave us with? What about 1,000-second tip to finish with, Rob? What is your 1,000-second running tip? Oh, no.
I've got one.
Go ahead.
Sophie's got one.
Buy the book.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Well, the one I regularly that's not in there, which I've given out as a few 1,000-second tips, is if you can plan a route for your run that includes llamas, alpacas, miniature goats, or any other kind of comical-looking animal, it always makes that run better. I actively run past these mini goats and I talk to them on as many runs as I can, and I'm sure the people who own that house think I am full on just on another planet, but it does make my day better just saying hello. I do it in Italian as well because they're Italian mini goats. So I learned what it was, some words to talk to those goats. So that's my 1,000-second tip.
100%. For me, it's ponies. Any ponies. Silly little pony things. Absolutely. I used to do a lot of that in the UK. I'd be like, oh, I'm going to go on that run because I get to go and see the ponies.
I think we'll need to see some pictures of these during the One Slam Challenge, guys. Like small animals, The stone Victorian dinosaurs in Crystal Palace Park are equally inspirational. Thank you, Chloe Selma. Yeah. Very nice. Very nice. All right, guys. Thank you all for joining us. We're just going to hit stop on the recording and we'll upload this to YouTube and share so you can play back for anything you missed. Thank you so much, Sophie and Rob, for giving up your time for us this evening.
Pleasure.
Thanks, everyone.
Right, take it easy, everybody. Big love. See you in a few weeks for the real thing.
Yeah.
Bye.